And YouTube and we're live.
Hello, Facebook and YouTube. Yes, it's Gay USA back for another hour of scintillating and disturbing and occasionally amusing news.
In the home stretch.
Before the election and perhaps of our lives.
Well, they all have to end sometime.
Exactly. Chock full again of horrifying and edifying things this week. And about to go live doing that in about 20 seconds. Any final thoughts, Andy?
I'll save them for the air.
Okay. Don't
want to tip my hand.
Okay. I'm just deleting political ads.
Stop. You have to hit stop. Oh, you got.
And we have to really escalate the noise we make so that we'll be heard.
Welcome to Gay USA. I'm Andy Humm.
And I'm Ann Northrop.
And it's Spirit Day, a national day against anti-LGBTQ bullying, thus the purple in our attire.
Is that why my piece of paper looks purple? Is it reflecting down onto it?
I think so.
Strange. Well, yes, we'll talk about that and about some of the current horrors about bullying. And of course, Trump is bullying trans kids on the campaign trail. Hard to watch, but we're going to look at a little of it.
And with a phenomenal spending on anti-trans ads. We have new data on trans high school students and on LGBTQ plus women.
A federal judge has said that parents have the right to keep their kids away from any knowledge of trans people.
A gay bar was flooded by Hurricane Helene in Asheville, and it's making a recovery.
And an Episcopal priest is making a recovery. He was ousted for being gay and is now being reinstated after 40 years.
Never too late. The Rose Parade there in Pasadena is going to be led by a lesbian feminist icon on January 1st.
I think you'll recognize her. We have very concerning news about MPOX. We've been following it, but now it's getting a little more dire again.
Trans and intersex Catholics and some others met with the Pope and asked him to rethink his opposition to gender-affirming care.
Well, you know the answer to that. Fat chance. Don't hold your breath.
Miracles happen.
So I'm told. Well, here's a miracle. Star Wars is getting its first trans clone trooper.
Big news. Ann's going to review The Apprentice and the movies.
I did. I subjected myself to it.
And I'm going to review a play about the rise of Putin and a documentary about Noel Coward.
And Coleman Domingo is taking on a new role at the Metropolitan Museum of Art.
He is, but it is Spirits Day, this day when we're taping, a national day.
Spirit, not spirits.
Spirit. I thought I said spirit.
I think you said spirits.
Well, Spirit Day,
yeah.
As we tape, a national day against anti-LGBTQ bullying. And also it's a day to raise awareness of LGBTQ issues in schools. But this week, we're very sad to read about the continued trials of a young trans activist, Gavin Grimm, has gone through since winning his case in Virginia when his Gloucester County School Board banned him from the boys' restroom. He won, he got nothing from the litigation, but was quite celebrated. But now we learn at 25 years old, this was when he was 15, he's dealing with homelessness and PTSD, receiving some support from disability payments and a GoFundMe campaign.
And has talked about how he was bullied in school a lot. He was really an amazing figure over a number of years. He had to go through several trials and appeals, and sometimes he'd win and sometimes he'd lose, and he never gave up, and he just kept pressing it until finally he had a huge victory. But through it all, he was taking a lot of abuse from schoolmates and others.
So he volunteers at a climate justice group. He hopes to go back to college and become a teacher. And he says he'll be voting Democrat this year, but he is very disillusioned with liberal politicians not taking bold action against the Republican Party's onslaught of transphobic culture wars.
It's complex these days.
Well, there was this case where, Tammy Baldwin, who's in a very close race in Wisconsin, and she's getting all these anti-trans ads thrown at her. And when she was asked by Jonathan Capehart about it, how are you responding to this? She said, oh, my opponent, he's against everybody. And I think we need something more specific that, obviously they don't want to make that, as you say, take the bait.
Well, that's the dilemma. When you're on the defensive, you're not in a good position. So we need to find a way to attack.
I have a way.
Okay.
I have a way. You say these are our brothers and sisters. In terms of sports, which is what they're making such a big deal about it, that's controlled by the sports bodies, not by the government. And we need to embrace people and most people do support their trans neighbors, and we have to do the same.
The problem is that it's an emotional issue. It's not just a factual issue, and people are responding viscerally out of fear and bigotry, and responding to their hatred of difference and all of that. And because they've been ginned up into this fear by the lies that are told them. And it's hard to navigate that when people are responding out of emotion. So, yeah, I mean, I've been sitting around looking at this stuff and thinking, can't we go public with a line about, look, we're all human beings. Yes. And surely that's how we want to think of people. But so much of the world is not buying that message. So I don't know.
Much more about that later, and we will talk about all the ads and things. But can we give them the good news?
No, we have one more piece of bad news, which is from the New York Liberty basketball team, where Breonna Stewart and her wife are being horrendously harassed with hateful, threatening, vicious messages, particularly after they lost game 1 of the finals against the Minnesota Lynx, because Breonna Stewart made a couple of errors in the game and was blamed for costing them the game. Now they came back strong and won the second game, and they're still favored in this series. But the homophobic messages that they're getting from people they had to call the police because these messages were so threatening.
Well, I wasn't going to talk about it, but we learned this week of an anti-trans activist, a woman who she has alopecia.
Yes.
And so she's bald. So she went into a women's room and she was attacked, not physically, but screamed at. Get out of here. You're disgusting.
You're a man.
Yes, you're a man. And the point is, and she's all upset. Oh, no, I'm not. But the point is, we are all human beings. And when you attack on this basis, it will be bound to all women who look a little butch or something.
All people.
Yes.
People will find ways to exclude others. And that's what's happening.
And that it's 2024. Is that what it is? And that we're still into these strict gender roles. I mean, we had that nice hippie period where men wore long hair and, and women could have short hair and wear pants. I'm serious about this. These things, there used to be a lot of, policing of gender roles. I mean, you could get arrested for wearing the wrong clothes.
I'm just trying to find my notes about someone who said that. The television show English Teacher, which is now, as far as I'm certainly the gayest thing I've seen on TV in years, and on Hulu and Fox, FX. It's the entertainment versus the news division. But a gay teacher and his ex and a lot of other people. And this week's episode, a kid comes up to him after class and says, Mr. So-and-so, I'm struggling with this. I want to ask your help. I think I'm gay. Now, this kid appears to be like 16, 17 years old. And I'd really appreciate your helping me think through this. And the teacher says, "You're gay. It's 2024. Go out in the hallway and just say I'm gay, and everybody will come hug you and say good things to you. Get away from me. I don't want this. Go find someone your own age."
I saw. And what did you think of that, Anne?
I thought it was hilarious. I know we talk constantly on this show about people still coming out in isolation and coming out in fear, in part because of all these terrible messages they're given by people like Trump. But I also, I do want to say to some of these people, it's 2024. Get over yourself. Come on. We're all out here.
It's tough.
You say you have no role models. What the hell have we been doing all these years?
Right. Well, Billie Jean King got over herself a long time ago. And so we're seeing more honors for this lesbian feminist icon. We told you that she's going to get the Congressional Gold Medal. That was just a couple of weeks ago that she was awarded that, or said she's going to get that. And she's the first solo female athlete to receive that. Now at 81, she will be the first solo female athlete to be the Grand Marshal of the Rose Parade in Pasadena on New Year's Day, the 136th edition of that colorful show that we watch when we're recovering from New Year's Eve.
Might be a reason to go back to watching the Rose Parade.
She will be also part of the coin flip at the 111th Rose Bowl football game later that day.
Wow. Show us Billie Jean getting her. Yeah,
this is her
announcement.
Getting the announcement. And she was also honored earlier in the week with a bronze statue at Cal State LA. This was the university that she attended in the early 60s. She took time off to go win Wimbledon. So she didn't finish there. She told the students she intends to re-enroll and finish her degree. A statue is outside the phys ed building, which is already named at the Billie Jean King Sports Complex.
Well, it's a university in downtown LA, and she grew up in that area and started her career on the public courts there. And it's an oft-told story. But what I hadn't realized was how involved she's been with Cal State ever since.
Didn't even graduate, but she's very involved. They gave her an honorary degree.
And she's given them a lot of support and money and notice over the years. And it's just fantastic that she's decided to re-enroll at 81.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, out tennis legend Martina Navratilova joined J.K. Rowling to attack the United Nations for an International Lesbian Day that included a transgender flag. Martina declaring there's no such thing as trans lesbians. Lesbian means a female who's same-sex attracted. It's really pretty simple.
Well,
if you think human sexuality is simple, you are simple.
Yeah, and the whole point is that trans women are women. So if they're attracted to women, that makes them lesbians.
Well, I mean, I can remember psychiatrists in the old days when they were helping people transition. This is in the 70s. And if you transition to being a woman, then they said, now you got to go out with men. The psychiatrist would say this. Now you got to be straight. And they would say, I'm attracted to women.
Yeah.
And you're attracted. These are independent feelings that you have.
People are attracted to who they're attracted to, and it has nothing to do with gender identity. It has to do with who you're attracted to. Right. All right, I think it's time to go to Trump.
Well, we could, yes, let's do that.
Well, you saw him this week in his little dance party for 39 minutes because a couple people fainted at a rally of his and he couldn't think of anything else to do, so he just...
How about turning the air conditioner on?
Well, they did open a door. And he said, oh, that's a good idea. Thank you. But then he just didn't want to talk anymore. That's unusual. That's a sign that he's deteriorating. And he said, oh, play some of my favorite music.
Ave Maria.
And they started playing.
Not a dance tune.
They started playing one of them as an instrumental. And he said, where's the singer? Play the one with the singer.
It's psychotic.
I don't know. I'd like to do
anyway,
music
so
too.
One of the songs was Rufus Wainwright's cover of Leonard Cohen's Hallelujah, which he does quite beautifully. That was one of the things they played at that town hall in Oaks, Pennsylvania. So Rufus sent a cease and desist desist letter to the Trump campaign, saying witnessing Trump and his supporters commune with this music last night was the height of blasphemy. He's a Harris supporter, and he said Hallelujah is an anthem to peace, love, and the acceptance of the truth, an ode to tolerance, and said that if Trump really listened to the lyrics, he might experience a hint of remorse over what he has caused in the world, but I'm not holding my breath.
Nor
you better
am I.
not.
But Rufus did tone it down a little later in the day when by the time he got to the 11th hour on MSNBC, he was saying, well, maybe it was a good thing. Maybe it will influence the crowd to more peace. No, absolutely not. No. Please, he plays YMCA at all his rallies. So what good has that done?
So exactly. So Trump, is completely campaigning, not completely, but largely. There's a lot of Republicans campaigning on the anti-trans issue, especially the idea of trans people in sports. Immigration,
trans.
That's it.
Trans, immigration.
That's all they got.
Yep.
So the Trump spent $19 million on an ad that ran 55,000 times that's anti-trans. And here is Trump himself just talking about the issue at a rally.
Lying.
Goes to school and they take your child. It was a he and comes back a she. And they do this. And they do it. And often without parental consent. Can you even believe we're saying this?
Notice how he refers to your child as it.
I can't believe you're saying this because it is a total and complete fabrication, a lie, and yet you get away with this stuff.
He's even got Geraldo coming out against him now, his old friend, who said that he's a complete racist and he's endorsing Kamala Harris.
Well, a lot of people have come out against him, a lot of generals, a lot of Republican politicians.
A lot of people who think.
Yes, but the question is, do the non-thinkers have enough mass to get him elected? Well, I say no.
Well, he's completely doubling down on fascism, and he's holding a rally at Madison Square Garden on October 27th here in New York. He's obsessed with filling it with 20,000 people. Now, this was the place in 1939 that the German Bund, which was a pro-Nazi group, filled the stadium. There they are at this rally in the old Madison Square Garden, giving the Nazi salute. And look at this scene of the thing. They put a picture of George Washington on the stage. As our director pointed out, they held up a big banner that said, "Stop Jewish domination of Christian Americans."
And then we had Charlottesville. Jews will not replace us.
Now, don't forget, I wouldn't be surprised. Now, I'm not exaggerating here. I wouldn't be surprised if Fred Trump was at this rally because he was already a member of the KKK, and that's been documented, a Ku Klux Klan, and was arrested at a Klan rally. That's his father. And again, to repeat it, and you see it reflected in how he behaves on the campaign trail. He kept a book of Hitler's speeches on his nightstand, according to Ivana Trump, his ex-wife.
Well, he admires dictators. He still admires dictators, and I'm sure that started with Hitler. Meanwhile, Rise and Resist, our favorite local activist group, which has been outside all the courtrooms for a year with great signs condemning him and outside Trump Tower, is going to show up at Madison Square Garden and is inviting everybody to join them on
Where should we meet?
October 27th. At the post office across the street on the steps.
Wherever we can get
8th Avenue between 32nd and 33rd.
We protested at the Democratic and Republican conventions that have been held at Madison Square Garden.
Yeah, until Bloomberg pushed everyone out of the way and arrested them.
Yes, and kept them arrested throughout the entire convention.
The Republican convention. But yes, October 27th, Trump at Madison Square Garden, activists outside. I do not know.
All right.
We'll tell you next week.
Tell you next week, because that sounds like something I would like to go to.
Okay.
Although I am seeing the Christine Jorgensen play that day.
I bet you can do both.
Okay.
Maybe.
All right. Some other political...
Well, should we be heartened by the turnout in Georgia for early voting the first day?
Very, very encouraging because it's larger than before, although I'm hearing
Double.
the Republican turnout for early voting in Arizona is higher. So who knows? I mean,
well, I had pretty much given up on Georgia, thinking that, 2020 was a fluke. But 300,000 people,
that's great.
Double the number who came out in 2020, showed up for early voting.
We need to come out everywhere. And in the 17th district in Westchester for the U.S. House, former Congress member Mondaire Jones is challenging Republican Mike Lawler, and it's a tight race. Lawler got in trouble for wearing blackface in what he called a tribute to Michael Jackson when he was in college.
That is a picture of Mondaire Jones, not Mike Lawler in blackface.
No, but Mike Lawler, a white guy, was very dedicated to Michael Jackson, dressed up as him, and even more suspect, he went to the Michael Jackson trial on child molestation to support him.
Yes.
That used to get you in a lot of trouble.
Well, Mondaire Jones is in enough trouble of his own.
But wait a minute, the development in this race is that the Working Families Party has nominated somebody. It was engineered by Lawler, having a Republican take that lefty line by registering 200 Orthodox Jews in the party to participate in the primary. And
politics is a dirty, rough and tumble game.
So Working Families Party is putting out the word, don't vote for our candidate, vote for the Democrat.
Wow.
But that's a dirty trick worthy of Nixon and Kennedy, I should say.
Yeah. Well, here's the kind of thing that will not happen under a Trump administration, but only under Democrats. The Department of Defense is working through its evaluation of the LGBTQ military people who were thrown out under Don't Ask, Don't Tell. They have looked at something over 800 cases and decided...
No, they've given those 800...
I'm about to get to that.
Sorry.
They examined 800 plus cases.
2,000.
They are... No, but the first tranche is 800 and some. Okay. They've given 800 of them upgraded discharges, and 96% of those that they have made a final evaluation of.
Right.
And they will have their benefits restored, which is fantastic.
Now, they say 13,500 in all were thrown out from 1994 to 2011.
Yep.
A third not considered for upgrades because they were thrown out during basic training. So advocates want those reviewed as well.
Of course, if that's why they were thrown out.
7,000 had been previously upgraded. And the thing is, if you got a less than honorable discharge, you can't get benefits, education benefits, you can't get VA benefits.
You can't get jobs.
And you couldn't in many cases. But there were no formal plans to look at additional cases. I do want to go back to politics for a second and remind you that the Victory Fund is has endorsed a whole bunch of LGBTQ candidates on all kinds of offices, from Congress and the Senate, right down to school boards. And go to victoryfund.org. There are lots of them, because even if they all win, it's not enough to reflect on percentages in the population.
Well, here's another wrinkle on politics. You know that there are reproductive rights referenda on ballots in several states this year. And one of them is in Florida.
Yes.
Which has a 6-week cutoff on abortion availability in the state of Florida. And so a referendum has been proposed that would make reproductive rights fully available. But it requires a 60% vote in the state. Well, the government of Florida, your governor, Ron DeSantis, has now demanded that TV stations take down ads for the proposed referendum on the grounds that it's lying.
He's also using the health department to send out messages that this is dangerous for women. The health department. This is...
shameful hardly begins to describe it. But their argument on these ads is, hey, our law says that if you have an emergency, if you're bleeding out in the parking lot, as they say, of course our doctors will take care of you. Well, of course they won't, because the law is not clear enough. But that's the government's argument, that you're lying because you say people are limited to 6 weeks. But if you have a problem, you can get care. No, you can't.
Yeah, I suggest you ring the doorbell at the governor's mansion. Now, marriage equality is on the ballot in 3 states. California is going to vote to repeal their constitutional amendment against same-sex marriage. Remember, it's legal in all the states because of court decisions, but because of the Obergefell decision. So California is going to vote on that. Colorado is going to vote on that, where they have a gay governor. And Hawaii is going to vote on repealing their amendment, which is a little different, but it's all about same-sex marriage.
Well, this is because we're terrified that the Supreme Court, the current Supreme Court, will overturn Obergefell and maybe Lawrence v. Texas and Edie Windsor's case.
Sodomy could be illegal in 13 states.
Exactly.
Again.
We'd all
Not
be going
13,
to jail.
because they probably have repealed it in 1 or 2 of them. But
well, some states that had anti-same-sex marriage laws,
most of them,
thanks to George Bush, often just let them go by the wayside because the Supreme Court Obergefell decision overruled that. But if that decision disappears at the Supreme Court, if they repeal that decision, then all those laws, which are still on the books and were being ignored, are back in operation. And
I want to talk to my fellow New Yorkers. We will vote on a state equal rights amendment to protect from discrimination on the basis of sex, sexual orientation, and gender identity, and to protect reproductive rights. It's called Proposition 1. I finally got a piece of literature on this on the street. I have to say I'm concerned that most of the politicians in New York are not sending out stuff to get us all to vote yes on this. And by the way, if you live in New York City, there's 4 or 5 other things that the mayor put forward on the charter things. Vote against them. It's a put-up job. Or corrupt Mayor Eric Adams.
Well, the system in New York is people want to put referenda on the ballot, but if the city government proposes others, that knocks the citizens' ones off. So the ones that are there are the ones proposed by the city government to just keep better ones off the ballot.
Right. Okay. We told you about some college women's volleyball teams forfeiting games with San Jose State University over the presence of an allegedly trans woman on the team. So a majority of the University of Nevada team voted to forfeit too. But their university, citing the state's constitution and laws, said it's going to send a team down there to compete, and says if individual players don't want to play, they're not going to get disciplined. But the player in question is compliant with NCAA rules and has been playing without any issues for 3 seasons.
Because she meets the testosterone limits that are imposed by the NCAA. I don't think there's any question she's trans, is there?
It's never been completely confirmed. It was one person who said she told me something.
Well, they talk about her playing for 3 years without being challenged, and because she meets the testosterone rules, I assume that means she is.
The players that have been voting to forfeit, they say, "Oh, it's unsafe for us."
Hasn't been for 3 years.
Well, that's the indoctrination of all these anti-trans ads and Fox News.
All right, let's go to Pennsylvania. We'll do a few education stories. Where in Mount Lebanon, Pennsylvania, an elementary school teacher decided to read her students, first graders, a couple of books on trans issues, trans people. And some of the parents of those first graders went to court and said, this is outrageous. No one consulted us. They shouldn't be doing this. And the judge ruled for the parents. Now, I have to say it was sort of approached sloppily.
This is Judge Joy Flowers Conti, who was appointed by George W. Bush.
Yeah. They could have done a better job of setting this up.
Well, I mean, the teacher has a trans child, I think. I think that's the case.
Maybe, yes.
Yes. Herself has a trans child, and the books were age appropriate, and the principal had been fine with it.
Yes.
So the fight for inclusion is endless. And then in Oklahoma, the ongoing story of the wicked state school superintendent, Ryan Walters. He was brushed back in his bid to buy Trump Bibles for all the classrooms at
too expensive.
$60 a pop. So now they can use other Bibles and they can use the other documents that were supposed to be in the Bible, the Constitution, of course, written by Jesus Christ and God.
Moses.
It's the serious stuff. These were all supposed to be part of the book. They can be done separately. But he was chided by the state office.
Pledge of Allegiance.
He was chided by the state office of management for his naked abuse of power. But he's a lawless official who has to be watched like a hawk.
It's interesting. New figures from the CDC are quite interesting.
Yes.
3.3% of high school students identify as trans. These are figures from 2023. But it's
this is the United States. Where do we get to? Where are we going later?
Not the Netherlands, yeah. I hope. This is a survey of 20,000 high school students as part of an ongoing series of surveys by the CDC. 3.3% of high school students identify as trans. 2.2% identify as questioning. They reported that they face extreme discrimination, marginalization, violence, and suicide attempts.
A quarter of them say they have attempted to take their own lives, compared to 5% of cisgender male students and 11% of cisgender female students.
They report being bullied, feeling hopeless, depressed. And the CDC, to its credit, recommends that these students be supported.
Well, it's a real crisis for trans kids.
Yeah.
Not all the false charges made by Republicans who hate these kids, it's due to that. And the Republicans who are pushing all this anti-trans stuff, are doing nothing to help these kids, of course. They're hurting them. But they've also done nothing for girls and women's sports. What have they ever done for girls and women's sports? Are they standing up for pay equity for women in sports? Have you ever heard that from Ted Cruz? Absolutely not. Which makes me think
I think J.D. Vance wants them in homemaking classes.
Which makes me think of the passing of Lilly Ledbetter this month. The U.S. Supreme Court denied her. There she is with President Obama. The U.S. Supreme Court denied her claim to wage discrimination in 2007 on a technicality. Samuel Alito said, "You didn't file soon enough," after a lower court had awarded her $3 million for mistreatment by the Goodyear Company. So SCOTUS gave her nothing, but under Obama and a Democratic Congress, this makes a difference. They passed the Lilly Ledbetter Act to close the loophole that denied her fair pay. So she's quite a hero.
That's one of our themes this week. Who's in charge makes a difference.
Yes, and as I said, it's alarming to read that most people don't know what party controls which house of Congress. It makes an enormous difference, and we're on the verge of electing a Republican Senate.
Given the laws that Trump wants to impose, telling people what to do, I think we should require people to watch 1 hour a week of MSNBC, 1 hour a week of Fox, 1 hour a week of whatever, the CNN. Golf Channel.
Okay. All right. Another survey, the National LGBTQ plus Women's Community Survey, from 5,000 gay, lesbian, pansexual, bisexual, queer, and asexual women.
I think I filled that out. But it's very self-selected. It's not a random survey.
Found a lot of anxiety and depression and people trying to take their own lives. I
didn't report any of that.
At some point. So look, it certainly points to the fact that our work is far from over.
Well, I think in general in this country, there is an extremely large cohort of people who are depressed and fearful and anxious, and they're all voting for Trump. Not all, but let me take that back. Forget it. But it's one reason this country is messed up.
Okay. Well, all right. We could go on. In Oklahoma, we want to report the sad news of a Black trans woman who was killed in a hit and run in Rochester on October 2nd. Honey Daniels was 37. The driver fled, but the vehicle was found and the driver identified, still under investigation. She'd been involved in the trans movement since she was 15 and was supported by her family.
Absolutely. So what we don't know is whether this was a deliberate murder or accidental or whatever, but the driver did flee the scene, but they have caught up with
hit
him.
and run.
Yeah, and in Alexandria, Virginia, oh, wait a minute, before we do that, let's do Asheville, North Carolina.
Yes, do.
Hurricane Helene, the first of the horrendous hurricanes to hit the Southeast, hit particularly in North Carolina. I'm still concerned about what that's going to mean for the vote, but I should be
Well, they're giving
even
them
more
breaks over there.
concerned.
Trump is seeing to that.
But first, we're concerned about
everywhere else, voters get screwed, excuse the expression. But in that part of North Carolina, although Asheville's a liberal enclave,
it certainly is.
but the rest of the Western North Carolina.
Well, one business very hard hit in Asheville was a brand new gay bar called Day Trip that had only been in business for a month, and it was completely destroyed. So the owners, a gay couple, Brandon and Dave Davis, put out a GoFundMe plea. They were under 23 feet of water in their establishment. And
move to higher ground, I hope.
Well, you'd think in that area that it would be higher ground, but what happens is the rivers overflow, and so it's not just like at sea level. Well, they have raised $200,000 in their plea, or is it $193,000 to rebuild their bar.
And in Florida, as if Ron DeSantis doesn't have enough on his hands with the destruction of his coastal communities, he's ordered 12 state universities to remove any classes that may distort significant historical events, teach identity politics, and under the law, stop spending state or federal money on anything that advocates for DEI or promotes political or social activism. Now, the law's already shuttered all the LGBTQ centers on campuses.
And any classes that deal with race or disability or...
Canceled classes, yeah. LGBTQ studies, women in literature is now off the table. Sociology of gender, anthropology of race, Chinese calligraphy, you can't teach that anymore. I can't imagine what's left and how is a degree from a Florida State University going to be respected anymore anywhere in the world outside the White House if Trump wins or the Republican Senate staff?
I saw a lovely interview with Max Frost, the young congressman who went to the villages where we've showed the video of the growing train of golf carts for Harris Waltz there in a very Republican enclave. And he was very upbeat about growing anger at the Republicans there.
By the way, there are going to be rallies against book bans all over the country on October 19th on Saturday. And in New York, we're going to be at the New York Public Library. I'll be there on 5th Avenue at 41st Street.
That's your birthday.
So I'm celebrating my birthday by fighting book bans.
And in fact, that is Spirit Day.
They always move. Spirit Day is actually today, the 16th, because they want it on a school day.
I see.
Last year it was October 19th. Usually it's October 19th.
Okay.
In honor of me, of course.
Of course.
No. But and they're going to, at the public library, they're going to have Sasha Velour and the author of Tango Makes Three.
Nice.
Interested to meet Peter Parnell and Justin Richardson. There'll be book giveaways, music activities, 150 events around the country in 40 states.
Will the Penguins be there?
It's a little warm still in New York.
Oh, what do you mean? They put out the ice rink at Rockefeller Center.
That's true. And in the Woolman rink.
Well, it's been cold for a few days this week, but it's going to warm up. Religion. In Alexandria, Virginia, Reverend Henry Stock. Harry Stock has been reinstated as an Episcopal priest. He was defrocked 40 years ago for officiating a holy union ceremony between men.
And he also had a male partner, and Mark Christophic, and they're now married, and they're still together.
45 years later.
He got an apology from the Episcopal Bishop of West Virginia and the reinstatement in recognition of his work as a theologian who advocates for LGBTQ people within Christianity.
Well, when he got thrown out of the Episcopal Church, he went to work for the Metropolitan Community Church, which is the LGBT-friendly church, and he taught classes on what the Bible really says. So he hasn't been out of work all this time.
If you have him as a guest preacher, he talks about homophobia and the Bible, a deadly combination.
And we're still seeing elements of that in Spokane, Washington, a pretty conservative area in eastern Washington state, where the Westboro Baptist Church has reared its ugly head again. They threatened a protest of one trans woman on a track team at East Valley High School, and they shut down the school.
Which is ridiculous.
Well,
they said for safety, but actually they're not violent. You know,
no,
they worry
ugly.
about the interaction of the kids with these.
They said
people.
they didn't want to expose the kids to this kind of hatred.
Let the kids come out with their umbrellas and shield everybody from their messages.
Well, there were 50 counter protesters against the 8 members of the Westboro Church.
The Westboro, they're disgusting. They go to funerals and protest. I met them in New York once, and they said, "Andy, God is gonna drop kick you to hell." and they laugh.
And you said when? All right. Tell us about James McGee.
Oh, well, I was going to do, I was going to do the coming out first this week. Actor Jermel Simon came out. Jermel Simon came out publicly on National Coming Out Day. He plays Benny Upshaw Jr. on the Netflix series The Upshaws. His character on the show came out last year. He's coming out. He says, "I've decided to love myself unconditionally. The one thing that I thought was the biggest curse in my life is actually the biggest blessing I could ever receive." Somebody say amen.
I'll say, it's 2024.
All right. So, yes, we're talking about obituaries. A very enigmatic artist and poet, James McGee, has died at 79. Most famous for his 4 decades he spent in West Texas in the desert, creating a monument of stone and steel called The Hill. He had an earlier gay life in New York working at the UN, but spent most of his time in gay bars and bathhouses, did become HIV positive, moves to El Paso. He painted under the name Annabelle Livermore and was successful, more successful at that than working under his own name. I mean, Laura Bush used to collect Annabelle Livermore paintings.
We need new names.
So it was a fascinating life. I'll link to it in our email. In his later years, he did have a female companion, Camilla Carr. Companion.
We all have companions.
Yes.
International news?
Yes.
All right. The Pope's been meeting with us again. Not doing much. By the way, they had a big bishops' meeting that the Pope presided over. They dropped all consideration of women's issues and LGBTQ issues. They were very cowardly. We didn't report that this week. But this week, he meets with New Ways Ministry, and they're urging him, with a lot of trans people and intersex people present, you got to come around on this opposition to gender-affirming care. But the Vatican's doctrinal office just rejected such care just recently. So anyway, Sister Janine Gramick was there. She's been advocating for this year. The Pope was described as receptive, but they didn't make any news in terms of a change in position. Wasn't he described as silent through most of it?
He looked on with concern. We want to hear what you're going to do. Because, anyway.
Russia, a couple bad things in Russia. First of all, Russia told gay men jailed in Chechnya that they have to go fight in Ukraine or face new phony charges and longer prison sentences. Yeah. So they're forcing them where, they experience beatings and rape in jail in Chechnya. We used to talk a lot more about that. That hasn't been in the news lately, but now they're being recruited forcefully to go to Ukraine. And they haven't quite done that with the guys they rounded up in the 2 gay bars. They raided 2 gay bars in Moscow.
Yes, 50 people arrested using the pretext that they were fighting drug trafficking. The police forced the patrons to the ground, violently frisked them. 200 people were at this National Coming Out Day event at one of them when the raid took place.
They take seriously their laws in Russia. And when they have a law that says you can't be openly gay or display anything, they mean it.
The UK Conservative Party has picked the 2 farthest right anti-LGBTQ members to be their party leader. This Kemi Badenoch campaigns against what she called nasty identity politics. And Robert Jenrick is a hardline anti-immigrant. So it's not a very forward-looking party.
You know, their politics are identity politics, but it's all about their identity.
Yeah.
And then
She's a black woman.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, in South Korea, some new activism, 11 same-sex couples tried to register their marriages to provoke a legal case to try to get same-sex marriage legalized in South Korea.
And we've told you that the Netherlands politically has moved more to the right, but in their survey, 17.7% say they're LGBTQIA. 11% bisexual, 1.8% gay, 0.7% lesbian. Anyway.
I want to know the methodology.
But this is the first time Statistics Netherlands has published an estimate of how many LGBTQIA people over 15 live in the country and how they differ from others. They estimate 2.7 million LGBTQIA people, 1% estimated to be trans. Anyway. Okay, AIDS news. Yeah. Well, it's going to be Mpox news this week.
Yes. A new report from the CDC here, the Centers for Disease Control, that Mpox is mutating around the vaccines that people have been taking.
And that
it wears off after a year.
Well, the vaccine wears off, but what the treatment that they use, it's called tecovirimat, which is the first line drug when you get it, is proving to be less effective now against the new strain. So so you do need booster vaccines apparently, and we hope that they develop new therapies. They also found that infection with Mpox is 5 times more likely among gay and bi men who engage in unprotected anal sex as the receptive partner. So, sorry for the bad news, but you got to face facts.
And the strains are getting more virulent as well as drug resistant.
Yes.
So you have to take this seriously. At first, we thought some of it would just wear off.
Well, I convinced a friend to go get the vaccine. He's an older guy, but he still has sex. And, so well, my doctor hasn't recommended it. I said, tell him what you're doing. And he did. And the doctor said, oh, you should get the Mpox vaccine.
Okay.
All right.
Entertainment news.
Well, the musical Suffs about the suffragist fight for the right of women to vote is going to close on January 5th and launch a national tour in September in Seattle at the Fifth Avenue Theater. It was created by Shana Taub and counts Hillary Clinton among its producers, a very stirring tribute to these brave women. The picture there at the center is of one of the lesbian characters played by Jen Kolela, playing lesbian suffragist Carrie Chapman Catt in the show.
And be on the lookout for Honora, the film that won the Palme d'Or at Cannes as the best film in the festival. It's directed by Sean Baker, who made Tangerine, the sex worker film that was shot on iPhone. Remember when that was a huge story a few years ago? And the Florida Project about the kids in a housing development there.
I did watch the trailer for Honora, and it looks wild.
It's supposed to be hilarious. It's about New York sex workers, comic misadventures. It's opening on October 18th in just a couple of days in theaters, and then we'll be streaming. It's about a Brooklyn sex worker who marries the son of a Russian oligarch.
Yeah. Yikes.
Honora, keep your eye out for that.
Attention, Star Wars fans. They're giving us our first look at the first trans clone trooper. The character of Sister is not new, but she comes out in the secrets of the clone troopers. She figured she'd have to hide but her brothers in the 7th Sky Corps
Stop it.
gave her the name Sister as a constant reminder that she belonged.
Yeah, well, Star Wars fans are not so thrilled.
Some are happy, some are not.
Bad reviews on Amazon are trying to kill this. And I would like to kill the movie The Apprentice, which got fairly good reviews. I hated it.
This is about early Trump
Roy
Cohn.
The early life. And
Jeremy Strong, is that his name?
Yes, and Jeremy Strong plays him as sort of a nervous
Cohn?
Yeah. I mean, nasty and vicious, but so is sort of like this. And Cohn was a much stronger character physically.
I had an encounter with him that I could talk about, but he was a very odd person.
Well, I found the movie superficial, unoriginal, simplistic, and it was partially financed by Dan Snyder, the former owner of the Redskins, now the Commanders, because he thought it was going to be a pro-Trump movie.
Well, it's apparently tanking at the box office.
Hallelujah. I'm sorry I paid to see it.
I saw a terrific documentary about Noel Coward, one of the leading playwrights and songwriters and performers of the 20th century. It's narrated by Alan Cumming. I got to hear Alan after the screening talk about it. And it's about his prodigious talent, Private Lives, Hay Fever, Present Laughter, all those things, those plays. Movies such as Brief Encounter, which I'd forgotten.
You skipped the title.
What?
You didn't say the title.
Well, it's Mad About the Boy.
Yes, which is a famous song of his, which I have a Dinah Washington recording of that's just wonderful.
But it's also about how he lived his gay life really fully, as you could for a man born in 1899. He died at the age of 73 in 1973. So it's a good one.
There's another.
And it will be streaming, VOD.
Documentary coming out in mid-November on Janice Ian, called Janice Ian Breaking Silence, which was the title of one of her albums. That will be streaming. We haven't seen that, but it's getting a lot of good
we're
talk.
at the 50th anniversary of the Saturday Night Show, which was what it was called at the time, Saturday Night Live. She was the first musical guest on that program. Yeah. Janice Ian.
Singing at 17.
She also was a bathhouse owner.
She's got a lot going on, and she's around.
She did.
So this is a documentary about her.
And I want to review a very timely play about the threat of Putin. It was at the Manhattan Theater Club, Erica Scheffer's Vladimir. Now, Putin himself doesn't appear, but we see the toll of his reign of repression on journalists. Over there on the left there is Norbert Leo Butz playing one of them. And a female journalist, we'll show her, is Francesca Faradany. Now, Scheffer is a child of Russian emigres, and she wrote this very thoughtful and engaging play in response to the rise of extremism in the United States. And it certainly put me in mind of all the assaults on us here. But that was well underway in Russia in 2004. And we see, the journalists have sort of this fight or flight. Do I stay here and keep reporting and lose my life, my job, whatever? It's all about that. But it has some humor in a Chekhovian kind of way. But it's mostly a harrowing experience. Chekhovian, because he technically wrote comedies.
I'm just hoping our audience knows
Anton Chekhov, the good doctor. Anyway, there's no easy answers. And, the other thing is the characters sort of wonder aloud, is anything I'm doing making any difference?
We have that dilemma every single day in this country.
Well, it's a first-class cast directed by Daniel Sullivan. Okay. And I ultimately found it kind of moving, very moving.
And we just want to alert you that the New Fest LGBTQ Film Festival is still on in New York through this weekend and through the 22nd, I think. The closing night film is the one we love that we saw at a screening last week, Amelia Perez.
Ah, yes.
Yeah, so I don't know if that's sold out or not, but if you have a chance to see Amelia Perez, you have got to see it.
And that's coming to Netflix, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Yes.
And some of these films in the New Fest Festival are streaming.
Yes, they are.
So check out newfest.org to see what's still on and what you can see in person. Or they run a good shop there.
They do.
And I've seen a lot of
over 100 films.
Well, that's the problem, is figuring out what to see. There should be some way to sort it out. I remember seeing a short lesbian film, whose name I can't remember, that was just hilariously funny. It was so
All
good.
right. You know, we tell you about the Met Museum Gala every year because it's always yes, because it's always a pretty gay event.
Okay.
With all the costumes and things. But the May 2025 Gala is titled, and the exhibit there, Super Fine, Tailoring Black Style, an exhibit on the historical and cultural emergence of the Black dandy. And among the co-chairs with Anna Wintour, who runs the Costume Institute, are out actor Coleman Domingo and pro-LGBTQ race car driver Lewis Hamilton. And NBA star LeBron James is an honorary co-chair.
It's an I think all black male committee of, well, you see the picture there. There are about 8 of them. And it's very interesting that they've decided to do this when, you know, they used to do Jackie Kennedy's pillbox hat. Am I being too snarky?
Well,
what will be interesting, because it's always the most interesting at the Met Gala, is the entrance, the staircase,
yes,
and the way people are dressed. And if this is a show about Black dandyism, that's just opening the door to who knows what.
Be careful, especially you white people. Be careful what you wear. No appropriation. Just be white.
Well, that's an interesting dilemma to put to people there. And we also want to remind you that Street Theater, the great Doric Wilson play about the Stonewall riots, is still on through this weekend at the Flea Theater.
Yes, it's a satire, by the way,
yes,
on the Stonewall riots.
Very effective. And a viewer reminded us that when we were trying to remember what bar it was set in a few years ago when they did a revival, it was the Eagle.
Right.
I thought maybe the Mine Shaft. No.
Although this time they actually did it at the Stonewall for a couple of performances.
They did, and they did it at a bar too. But now it's at the Tassos Flea Theater where they do most of their productions.
And we'll remind you, when you visit New York, there's a Stonewall Visitor Center now. Now we hope and you can sign up online for free tickets to go see that. I hope it's gotten better since we saw it.
I hope so too. So we have a couple of minutes. How are you? Let me take your temperature at this moment on the election. We have 3 weeks to go.
Well, as you said, you know, you've said a couple of things, which I will repeat, and I keep repeating to people. The trends in voting since Roe v. Wade was struck down have been moving towards us.
Even before, ever since Trump was first elected in 2016. And
the strength of of people offended by the abortion, we're going to make abortion their priority. 22% of women are going to make that their priority. People wouldn't have said that before. So that's hopeful. The thing is, we don't live in a state that's getting bombarded with all these ads, which seem to be having some effect.
It's true. Well, why wouldn't they? They're very vicious. Not only is there the one about, or there are lots of ones about trans kids in schools, but he's put out this military one about we will not have a woke military, and he's used scenes from an anti-war film, Full Metal Jacket,
right,
and interspersed that with military guys in drag.
Military guys in drag, brought to you by Comrade Kamala. Well, he would say Kamala.
He would say Kamala.
Right. Well, that's what he says.
I do think he's deteriorating. I do think it's mixed. You know, some nights he gives a speech and he looks entirely out of it. And then he does an interview and he sounds coherent. He's lying. I haven't seen those lately. The Bloomberg interview he did yesterday.
Insane.
Well, it was insane, but he sounded coherent.
Absolutely couldn't even answer the questions. And the interviewer kept saying, and so finally he says to the interviewer, "You're not a very nice guy. I only came here because I like some of the people in this audience, but you're not a nice guy."
Well, that's his shtick. To be continued. We'll be back next week for more empty predictions and hopes and dreams.